Thanks for joining us for Issues and Answers. I'm Ian Boyne. Gender affairs is what we'll be discussing today. We have with us the Director of Policy and Research at the Bureau of Gender Affairs, Mrs. Sharon Coburn Robinson. We thank you for your company. Good to have you on the program, Mrs. Robinson. Gender affairs is a crucial subject. Not everyone is as apprised of the importance of the subject as really ought to do, and I use advisedly because a lot of men really need to be sensitized on this issue. Why do you think that gender affairs really is a crucial area for focus?
Well, I thank you for having me, and I want to say that gender, as you rightly pointed out, is very critical because it's cross-cutting. So in every situation, whether it's on the job, it's a family situation, it's global, international, regional, you are going to have issues relating to men and women and how they negotiate, whether it is a business opportunity, it's a promotion, and just about in every situation, whether it's employment, it's an area that has to do with negotiation, like I said again, in most cases, entrepreneurship, you're going to have issues that relate to women and men, and how women negotiate, how men negotiate, how the space is so layered that you don't have discrimination. And as a country, we do have pieces of legislation that force us to pay attention to issues relating to gender. And we do also have conventions, rights, agreements, and so on, that we have signed on to and ratified, and they pull us in that particular direction to say we must observe certain things and we are not allowed to discriminate. And if we do, these are the penalties.
Does the government have a policy on gender affairs? Is there some document which governs the state's approach to gender relations?
Certainly. We do have a national policy for gender equality, and that policy is something we're very proud of, because what it does is it allows the mainstreaming of gender, meaning concerns relating to women and men, how they negotiate, how they move in spaces. That's going to be looking at making it gender balanced so that there's no discrimination against women and men. And that policy was approved in 2011. And it's on the strength of that policy that we were able to transition from Women's Affairs on March 21, 2016, via Cabinet Decision 816 to Gender Affairs, because we see that the role of men is so critical in the negotiation, in the dialogue. We've been for years talking about gender-based violence, and in most cases we were looking at women as victims as well as survivors, but perhaps not really delving so deeply in the issues relating to men and how their issues were critical to the negotiation, and having them elbow the table and be a part of the dialogue.
So issues such as the marginalization of our boys in some areas and the marginalization of men in some areas are legitimately the concern and under the purview of the Bureau of Gender Affairs?
Certainly. And even now, with a renewed focus, with this new ministry, there is a renewed focus, and it's called male marginalization. That's the theme that they're referring to it under this new ministry. And one of the areas is the Ministry of Culture.
You moved from
gender,
the Office of the Prime Minister.
That's correct. And that was in March. The March removal of the name was actually March, but in terms of the transition, officially it was April 1. And the focus, April 1, 2016, all of this year, all of that. And even though the policy was approved in 2011, we actually got the rebranding March 21 officially. And on April 1, we transitioned to this new ministry. And the big ticket item for us is human development, human capital development actually, and social inclusion, making sure that we do not marginalize anyone, or if there's a marginalized or vulnerable group, whether it's a male, female, or it's a boy, girl, or whether it's somebody in the rural areas or whatever area it is across the stratas, that we do not discriminate and we are inclusive in our approach.
What is happening vis-a-vis the sexual harassment law?
Interesting that you ask. I think what happened is the legislation is actually on hold because of the election. So there's a new direction that was given by the minister, and our minister has signaled that she wants it to go in a particular direction. And so there's discussion between the ministry That's our ministry, Culture, Gender, Entertainment and Sport, and the Ministry of Justice. We're having dual carriage on that piece of legislation. And while I speak of that, I must speak about the National Anti-Sexual Harassment Policy, which is what we use to inform the legislation.
Yes.
And that is very important as well because it will set the parameters for
So there's
the
a national
sexual harassment policy. Yes, there is. And that will set the parameters for the legislation and will also bring awareness on the legislation itself and what it is that it will do, what forms of redress exist, and how do people access these forms of redress.
Yes. How are we going to get men to take the issue of sexual harassment seriously? Because we like to say that there are some things that are innocuous and in our culture. And if we're going to be banning flirting and that sort of a thing, they're going to have issues with that. How would you interact with men? Because some of the things that they regard as innocent and so on really are discriminatory and are sexist.
I understand, and I do take your point. I think what happens sometimes is it's done in ignorance. You know, they might not be aware. What we've found, our experience has been, once we talk to men about the parameters of it, like how is it that you describe it, what constitutes sexual harassment and how is it defined, and in most cases it is a female or the recipient, because in some cases it's a male recipient, and increasingly we're having male-on-male violence and male-on-male sexual harassment. Male-on-male sexual harassment, and the reports are increasing, even though there's a stigma. Yes. Even though there's a stigma attached to male reporting on sexual harassment by a male.
Yes, true.
Because, you know, sometimes there's a little ridicule and a little trivialization of it. But yet it is encouraged strongly, and the legislation will speak definitively to that as well, in terms of ensuring that it doesn't matter, it's gender neutral.
Gender neutral.
Yes. And so there is provision for both male harassment and female harassment.
We're talking gender issues today on Issues and Answers, and we have the Director of Policy and Research at the Bureau of Gender Affairs, Sharon Coburn Robinson, with us. We take a break, but we'll be right back.
It's time for us to get it right. Equal rights and justice for our men and women. Equality.
Gender issues represent our focus today on Issues and Answers. Domestic violence, is that a major issue in Jamaica?
Certainly. The
Big
statistics, very big. Very big. The statistics indicate that the numbers are increasing.
Are increasing?
They are increasing despite the fact that there is so much work that's done. In some cases, you have a lowering of the reports, where you have an extreme penetration of awareness raising, and there is a specific method that has been used. Let us say the policing has increased. So if there is an increase in policing, especially community policing, where the relationship between the members of the community and the police have changed significantly, where there is a greater trust, and so on, you find that there is increased reporting and increased protection around persons, because now citizens take it on and find that they are now also assisting the police to protect. But where we find that there's a strained relationship between the police and the citizens, and you don't have that trust issue, you find that the reports are not as frequent and the incidents are higher. So we found that...
Are there some cultural factors, Mrs. Robinson, which feed domestic violence in Jamaica?
Certainly.
Cultural attitudes.
Certainly.
Let's talk about
certainly. We know that this is the thing of patriarchy. It's not something that, you know, some people don't like to hear about it. Yes. Where people think of the culture of entitlement, you know, where this person, and you have some misguided men who still feel that they have a right to women's bodies.
Yes.
And if they don't get it willingly, then they will take it by force. And so that can get into a place where you become a violent person, and you are you rape somebody, or you hit on somebody, or you stalk them to the point where they feel intimidated, and it affects their ability to have freedom of movement. And you might find that it might be a relationship, and the person who is the male person is earning less or not employed. Perhaps he lost his job, or he got a demotion for whatever reason, and his partner is earning more, and so he feels threatened by this new found
source of independence.
And this person's and they will say the person is guani or asserting self, and so there's this need to bring her back to where she feels like
who's in charge.
show who's in charge.
I'm still in charge. I'm the man.
Exactly. So sometimes we have that happening, and so we find that when it happens, there is a need for a negotiation, the need for the conflict resolution, discussion on the issues, getting parties to see that it's not about who is wearing the pants or who is bringing in the bread or the bacon, but it's about making sure that you are seeing eye to eye on issues. And especially if children are involved, that's an issue. Because sometimes we have found, and lots of research have proven it, that children who witness violence or who grow up in homes that have a history become violent. And so, so the cycle keeps repeating itself, and they become violent persons themselves and start perpetrating violence all over again. So the cycle has to be broken by public education.
And some of these abusers even use the Bible.
Precisely.
You say, man is head of the house, and they must submit to the man, and
that's correct.
Woman has no control over her body but
that's
the husband.
Correct. That's correct. So we find that when women are empowered and they understand what is in place, and there are laws, and there are policies, and there are agencies, ministry department agencies, and other social service providers that are in place to provide public education and support. And no one should suffer in silence, and no one has a right to be violent to you, and violence is absolutely not appreciated and not tolerated.
And there are agencies that women can go to, or people who are being abused, men or women, can...
Certainly. We are a part of a network of services. The ministries, we have large ministries that deal specifically with issues relating to violence. So there's the Ministry of National Security, and the Ministry of National Security has Sisoko, which will do the sexual violence piece of it. So there's those persons who are victims of sexual violence can be examined and counseled, and if it is they need legal representation, then they are referred to the relevant persons, and the police will of course do their job with investigation and so on. And there is the Ministry of Justice that has the Victim Services Division. So your legal representation comes in there and so on. And we do have other, the Ministry of Health, very big, in terms of the injury surveillance method. They have this mechanism that allows them to look at who is going to the hospitals, what are they reporting, how is it happening, and how can they reduce that. And there is a crime observatory. I'm not sure if you're aware of it. It's the Jamaica Crime Observatory. It's an integrated crime and violence integrated system. And that is a database that tracks the violence. Because as a policy person, I understand the importance of research and data to drive policy. So when you have data, you can use that to influence your programs and your policy, and you can perhaps plan how to make sure that those areas that are prone to having these attacks, that you beef up security around those areas, and the times, because what the observatory does, it tells you the times that are most popular for violence to take place, and the spots, and so on, the communities.
So this
and all
database is being
It is being
built up.
populated. It is alive and well, and it has been monitored through the Ministry of National Security rather, and it is Mona Infomix. That's where it is kept.
Yes.
And it's populated. But the committee meets. We have a sub-technical committee, and that committee meets, and we look at the data, disaggregate the data, analyze the data, and use that to plan for future activities.
We have only a short time, but I must touch on the national policy for gender equality.
Perfect.
For some of the key features.
There are 4 guiding principles that we think are very critical. The first one is gender equality and social justice. And, it's so important because everyone wants justice, and you know that. And so we want to make sure that in the workplace, at home, wherever you are, that whatever you're doing, your plan, your program, your policy, whatever you're rolling out, it should be fair. It should factor in a gender differential component, so no one is left behind and everyone benefits. The second guiding principle is multi-sectoral approach and partnerships. That means we bring everyone to the table, multi-sectoral, it's not just a joined up government approach. So you have private sector, public sector, NGO, community-based, faith-based, all those groups are part of it, because it takes all of us to do this. It's not a one person. And then you have political will and commitment. or political leadership and commitment, which looks at making sure that you have guidance from the top, you have buy-in from the top. So the Prime Minister is a part of it, the ministers of government are a part of it, the heads of departments, the heads of ministries are a part of it, and just about all persons who are in leadership position buy into this, because it's very critical. And the fourth and final one is participatory approach, and that's for everyone else who was not included in the other four. So everyone has a role to play in this. So you, in your space, ensure that you do not discriminate. So if you see a child that is in need of protection, you report as a fit person. If you see somebody who has been abused and you can support that person, or you can point them to where they can get the support, you take that role on as a fit person as well.
Good. Thanks very much. And certainly all of us can be fit. All of us should take on this responsibility of promoting gender equality, of ensuring that in our spaces, in our interactions, that we deal respectfully across the sexes. Thank you so much for your company today. Next week we'll be back. Until then, Ian Bourne wishing you a pleasant day.